Hello? Too loud? About right? Can I carry it around? I'll do that in a little bit. Again, thank y'all for coming. Did anybody have any bad weather or damage anything at home or not? You know that I got an alarm last night there about 1 o'clock. I don't know what time it was, and went there and turned on my TV and talking about a tornado. And the second thing he said is right headed towards Saraland and Chickasaw. And I had my prayer meeting right there. Yeah, but you know, a few minutes later, he says the all clear came on, you know, and then we had a hard shower at my house, and you know, within 10 minutes, it's cleared off. And the people that did have some damage, I understand, no one was injured. That's what I've heard, and that's wonderful. I tell you, those things are, you never know what they're going to do. But you know, God's in control of that also. Weatherman can give you all of this weather and all these warnings and all that, but they can't change the weather. I was telling someone, does anyone read or look at comics in a newspaper anymore? Do anybody use comics? Anyway, there's one in there called Wizard of Id. Do y'all, anybody remember that? Wizard of Id. Anyway, it goes way back years. And it's a little old, I guess they call it a castle in the town of Id. And there's a wizard there, you know, with his little, makes surprises for everybody, you know, and throws out all this stuff. And he'd always do a little thing. And the king is about this tall. And he's always getting on to him. And they're standing out on this balcony there on the castle, and all of a sudden the picture was showing snow, just covered them up. And a few minutes later, it showed them had to hold on to stand out the wind was just blowing. And the third, I think, one showed a heavy rain just coming down. And the old king looked up and said, "Using that baton again, wizard?" He said, "No, it's March." And I thought he could put in Mobile, because you know that's kind of the way the weather is here. It can change quickly, can't it? But anyway, tonight we want to especially continue to keep the Dunn family in your prayers and your thoughts. I'm sure all they realize, you know, in the last month, Brother Dennis's one of Miss Darlene's brother passed away. One of his other brothers has had some problems, David. And then this happened to Brother Leon, who served as interim here for about a year as a music leader, although he's a great preacher also. But he led music here for about a year and did a great job and got to be friends with everyone. And Dennis talked to me this week, early in the week. He says, one thing he always said, he said, "The church I love more than any I've ever served in is Bible Sara." He said, the people just bring it to your heart, you know. He said, "I really love that church." And he and I became close friends and all that, and just good people. But like I say, our pastor has been through a lot. He's had quite a few funerals that he has conducted for family now, but for friends also, and for people here in the church and all. He's had a rough few months. And believe it or not, he's tired. That's what it amounts to. That will, you lose friends and do a funeral service and plan on it. And I've had a brother and a sister-in-law that I had a part in the funeral service for them. And that's difficult. It's difficult. Even though you know that they might, or they are a Christian, their life rooted and they were better off, we can say that, but it's just tough. And Brother Dennis called me the other night, right after he'd passed away, and says, Karen, one of the first things she asked him as she told him that Leon died, she wanted him and Mark, the brother up at Rockhall Baptist, where's that, to do the funeral. And he and I had a prayer over the phone. And I came in and sat and talked with him one day this week, and we prayed again. And he said, in a way, I'm thankful that they thought enough of me that they asked me to be a part of this service. He says, but it's difficult. He said, difficult. He said him and Mark, his brother, was talking, and says they were trying to get together and make sure whatever they had to say, scripture to use, all that. And Brother Dennis and I do this also when we have a combined funeral. Says they were going over which each one, where they were going with their message, to make sure they didn't overlap or, use each other's. And he said, Mark was telling me what he was going to do, and said he started crying. And says, I told him where I was going to be, and said I started crying. He said we just had our cry over the phone. And sometimes I think that's good, And I just appreciate Brother Dennis. He got a heart for people. And he gives his all. He's always there for you. He's always been supportive of me. And one thing I say is, this time, I had a little more time than I did about 2 or 3 months ago when I got a call at 7:15 in the morning that I need to do the morning and both services that morning. And I turned to my wife and I says, you know who that was? She said, yeah. I said, you know what's going on? She said, not again, because I'd done this one other time. She says, you go study and I'll start praying. So I think God really and truly blessed me more that day than anyone else, because of part of the Bible said the incident season and out of season all the time. I didn't really know what that meant, but I learned it that day. So I've had a little more time this week, so I'm not sure it'll be as blessed, okay? Because you have a chance to study. I think sometimes you get too involved in what's going on and maybe get a little deep into it. But I want to remember that family for sure. And I got a list of others, and we'll go over them in a little bit and have our prayer time. I'll try not to stay too long tonight. Do any of y'all recall we having the war over in the, what's the name of the place over there? Huh? Ukraine, okay. Do y'all remember a few years ago when our president was Clinton? We had something we were engaged in Bosnia and Serbia. Anybody remember that? Or is that too far back, some of you? Bosnia and Serbia? And one thing we were doing, when I say we now, I'm talking about the United States, we were providing bombings. We weren't going to send any troops in whatsoever. We was going to do it all from the air, which turned out to be good. We didn't lose one person's life. But there was a Navy commander named Commander Scott O'Grady. Anybody remember that name by any means? I heard Scott O'Grady later give his testimony. He got shot down anyway over Bosnia there. And they have a package. He landed in his parachute. And he knew they were going to be coming after him because they knew the plane went down. And he always, they got a little package, and in that package is really even this pill. You've heard of the pill where you take it for, you kill your own life instead of them coming in and shooting you up too, I guess. But he landed, and he said he started running. He got to a ditch, and he stayed in that ditch. He knew they were hunting him, looking for him, and says he had a signal on him. They wear it all the time. They would send a signal to some radar or whatever that they could find him. But he couldn't activate it because they also might get on the signal and know right where he was at. So he was going to wait, and he hid there, and says one thing he had in that pack also was a Bible. He said he had always gone to church. He says his family were very church-related people. And he said he started praying. And he said, I realized I'd gone to church. That's all I'd done. I had spent years of my life in a church. I knew there was a God. He said, but I was in a church. He said, I started praying, and said God started revealing things to him. And he says, he asked God, he says, just get me out of this, and I will serve you the rest of my life. He said he repented of everything he could think of. And anyway, a few days later, when he had an opportunity, because they were sending in jets to get his signal, and he would turn it on and off, so they kind of got a point where he was at. And they sent in a helicopter to pick him up. There was some jets streaming overhead. And he says, when they landed, oh, by the way, he'd moved several times to keep away from people, maybe to find him. He said they would search for him. And says he couldn't find anywhere to hide, really. They wouldn't, just little old grass and bushes and all that. And he says, but he'd hide the best he could and try not, if he found a place at night, stay there. Make a long story a little bit shorter, helicopters came in, and as soon as they landed, he started running toward them, and he got on the helicopter, and they says, where have you been hiding? He says, well, right over there, where you saw me when I come up. They said, no, there's nothing to hide there, nothing to hide behind. And he said he had people walk within 15 to 20 foot of where he was, looking for him. And says, he kept telling them, that's where I was. That's where I was. I was there, I was over there. And he says, there's no way. He said, yes, there is a way. He said, God hid me. He used whatever was there. He said, he hid me from them people. He's, in his testimony, he ended up saying, I used to be in church. Always believed in church. Always knew there's a God. He said, but I turned my life over to the Lord. And he said, the rest of my life, I won't just be a church member. I'll be a worker in a church with the good Lord, even while he was there. And that was his testimony. God does mighty things. He can do such mighty things. It just overwhelms us. We're surprised by it sometimes, I guess. So anyway, tonight I wanted to take just a few minutes and open your Bibles to Hebrews, the book of Hebrews, if you haven't. Now, Brother Dennis taught Hebrews a while back, so I'm not going to try to cover anything he covered everything in Hebrews. When he goes through, y'all know he goes verse by verse. And I'm going to try to maybe do it a little different. Hebrews chapter 4. Find some notes here. Make sure I got it all down. The verses I'm going to share with you, and we won't get into a long discussion. Like I said, we'll have a prayer time and leave fairly soon, I guess. are verses that tells us things a Christian must be doing. A Christian. All Christians have certain things that we must be doing if we're true Christians. If we believe in serving God. And once we become a Christian, we don't have to worry about not being saved anymore, not going to heaven. But from that time on, all we have to do is to serve God in ways that benefit the kingdom of God. And by doing that, that's serving people around us and being part of that. So the scriptures I'm going to share with you are I guess I've heard one pastor refer to it as the salad questions, because they start with "let us." So it's not just what one Christian does, it's what we all do together. That's what makes the church. Everybody working together. So that we'll always use the word "let us" in here. And the first one is in chapter 4, verse 1. It says, "Let us therefore fear, lest the promise being left us of entering into his rest, any of you should seem to come short of it." So he's saying there's a promise that God has given us. There's a promise that we can depend on. There's a promise that he has guaranteed a Christian. So he's saying, let us carry forth. Let us do what we're to do, and that's mainly get the message to other people that led us to Christ. Let other people have that same message and use your whole being and everything that God has given you to serve other people in doing that. Tell them about Jesus Christ and what he's done. As this commander, Scott O'Grady, said he was going to do for the rest of his life. Quit playing church and start being the church. So it says, let us therefore fear. Fear. The word fear here not means scared, run, hide. Actually it means fear in a way that you're more bound to keep at what you're doing. I fear I shouldn't do it. I fear I won't do it. I fear all of these things is what you should fear. But the whole thing should strengthen you in what you should do. So be afraid of what you leave out, I guess is what I'm saying. Be concerned about, I haven't done enough telling other people the good news of Jesus Christ. That's one of the things that we should do. It says the early Jewish Christians, and this is just kind of like the people of Moses' day, when they was on the way to the promised land, what was they always saying? I wish we were back. Oh, we wouldn't be out here. We wouldn't have no water. We wouldn't have a bread to eat, and God gave them manna. We ain't got meat now, but he gave them the quail come in. But they said, we could have other things if we were back in Egypt. So they were saying, let us go back. That was what they were always saying. But he says, early Jewish Christians, like people of Moses' day, build up doubt about the promise of heaven because they were still there. They were still having hardships. They were still having difficulty where they were and what they were doing. And they said, we'd have it better. We want to go back to where we were. Sometimes we get comfortable with where we were, and we want to go back to that instead of going ahead as God has told us to do. We want to go back. You get in a comfort zone. You ever been there? You get in a comfort zone where you can do this easily at work, I think. You can find out a comfort zone, and you kind of use your ability to think and to stay energized into your job.